individual coming up is my good friend, Lloyd Montgomery. Is he in the audience, I'm hoping? I don't see him. Oh, there he is. I see him now. Okay. Now, Lloydie here. I fished for many years with Lloydie across the Copper River Flats there. And Mr. Cool Cucumber, always got more fish than me kind of guy. Love him, absolutely. And Lloyd retired from the Copper River there this last year, and I hated to see him go, you know. But and I've been considering my own retirement, of course, you know, and I struggle with it. And I wonder about people struggling with retirement. And I run into Lloydie here, and well, he retired all right. He lasted a couple months, and he bought a Bristol Bay bourbon. He's right back in the thick of it. I don't know. Retirement is a difficult thing for these guys here. And anyway, Lloyd, what else can I say? What a magnificent feat have you done lately? Let me think. Oh, what have you done? Oh, last year I remember he did an amazing tribute, and that was hard to beat. The alley-oop dance and the tribute, forget to who, or but it was a tremendous performance for the entire. I think it was done for the Fisher Poets on Sunday, if I remember right. Yeah, it was tremendous. Anyway, Lloyd Montgomery, Cordova, Alaska, Anchorage now, I believe, or more similar maybe. Is that up there? Where? Puyallup. Puyallup. Where's Puyallup? Oh, come on, I know where Puyallup is. That's where they have the horses and cows and pigs. Come on up here. Hey, Lloyd Montgomery. And he ain't really from Puyallup, he's from Cordova, Alaska, right, Lloyd? Come on.
You're right, and thank you for the introduction, I really appreciate it. That's my imitation of our harmonica. I didn't bring it with me, so I had to bring something. That's all I could think of. To go along with a little bit more with Dennis there, I've never had a summer off as far as growing up, because I started out in 1958 in a little village in Chiniga and started fishing with my grandfather on a company boat. So I went from same boat to same boat, went to my uncle's boat, and then finally I said, you know, my goal was to fish with one of the best highliners in Prince William Sound. So I went from my grandfather to my uncle to Tom Jackson to Lloyd White, and Lloyd White was just an incredible guy. He had this stove was so spotless, clean, you can cook an egg on a pancake. It didn't matter what it was super clean, and he said, Lloyd, he said, the secret to making a really nice pancake, take it, put it in the bowl, and stir it up. But don't completely stir it where all the bubbles drop. So anyway, I watched him, and he started telling me the story about, he went to this restaurant, and this restaurant was a really a poetic type of guy, and he said to Lloyd White, he said, he gave him a little poem, the first poem I ever heard was. And anyway, Lloyd White listened to his poem, and he said, he came back and he said, okay, let me think about that. When he comes back, I'll tell you my poem. And this is how it goes. So he comes back and with the dishes, sets them all up for dinner, and Lloyd White looked up at him and said, you know, here's what I have to offer you. 2 stews for 2 Jews, a little ass for country class. If that don't rhyme, I'll kiss your ass. And that was his poem, and he was an incredible guy. He always read from the time that we left the Harvard till the time we got back. But then, as I'm going through this here and talking about the stories that I shared on Dave Dinsmore, 1980s, there used to be a company called New England Fish Company. and it sold out to Chugach, a native corporation bought it. And through the years, you get to know all of the people in the fish camp, and I happened to be walking by an old Norwegian. And somehow or another, when you walk by his room, you have to stop him for a toddy. And he always had a jug next to him, in his Norwegian accent. He started telling the story about the competition that him and Stan Panion had. And I'm sure Bob Menard knows, a couple other people know about Stan Panion and Ernie Swanson. So Nels, as he's sitting there, he weighs 125 pounds when he's all wet. And he says, Lloyd, he said, you know, that Ernie Swanson and I, we always have always competition, you know. We're always see who can outdo, you know, one another, you know. He said one time, he said, I beat him very good. So anyway, there they go. They partied all night long, just party, these guys. In fact, these guys, when Cordova Alaska, they had the fishery, the guys from Seattle and Oregon had helped the Cordova fishermen become more efficient and better fishermen. Because these guys had come up with deeper nets, they come up with replacing the pulling by hand, these hydraulics and stuff. And so anyway, these two guys are always in competition, and they're always ahead of one another. Stan's got a slow boat, and Ernie, he's got a kicker behind him. So they're partying all night long. They got this bet going. He says, the first one out there, he said, you got to give me $100, you know, Ernie, or Stan. So there they go. Stan just chugging along. And then Ernie, he's on top of it. He says, I'm gonna beat that old Norwegian. So on the way out there by Whiteshed, Stan just chugged along, and here comes Ernie, just smoking up behind him. And he waves at him. He said, Ernie, he said, you know, you got to slow down. And Nels is telling the story. And anyway, he said, he slowed down next to him. He said, it looked like I'm going to win the bet this time, Ernie. Stan telling Ernie. And he says, no way in hell you're going to win this bet. And he said, for sure, I'm going to win the bet. He said, how do you figure? I'm not twice as fast as you are. He said, you may be twice as fast as I am, but I'm going to still beat you to the ground. So anyway, he says, Ernie, you forgot your net. He had to go back to town to get the net. He left the net in the harbor, and so he had to go back. So Stan, he's smiling all the way. I'm going to get $100, you know, from this so-called high-class fisherman. That's the end of that. Some of you guys, like David Nellis, who remember some of these old timers, like Forrest Postma, oh God, Elroy Swenson, some of the guys from the Columbia River. David Nelson was there, Gary Marinkovich in the late 80s. We had it made, let me tell you, at Chugach there, we could pull our boats out of the water and fix them, take the nets out of the water and put them in the warehouse, and had a big family. There was I remember Art Newman came up to me and says, what's this stuff about? Mug up. Mug up. I says, he's from New York, he's a Jew. That's okay, that's all right, I can live with that. So anyway, he says, what the hell is mug up? And I said, well, Art, I says that there's what you call, it's 8 in the morning, you have breakfast, then you have lunch, and you have coffee, and then you have mug up at 9 o'clock at night. They take all the leftovers and they have them out. The cook comes before it, and you go to the cookhouse and you have leftovers, and it's called mug up, Art. So he learned what mug up was. So anyway, talking about the old times at New England Fish Company, and the boats that are no longer there, the ones that are retired, the old wooden boats are gone. Mike Noonan, he's here. He had a boat called, can you guess what it was? Wooden Lips. That's the name of the boat that he had. So there's a lot of stories about different names of boats and how they came about. There's a guy that has got this Salt Dog website, and I emailed him. And he's really, really thorough in why they call boats different names. And I've always heard that they call them after females. Is it true? And he came back and he said, I don't know where he got his information. He said, no, but a lot of boats are named after females. So this time when I got my boat, my wife said, are you naming after me? No, because I went on this really long search about my biological father, which my mother would never tell me who he was. So at the age of 2 years ago, 2011, I went on this voyage of finding out who he was. My sister told me who it might be, but it wasn't me. So I went to see Prospective A in Las Vegas, got a trip, and I had the swabs for the DNA test, give it to him. And I didn't want to do it in the mail because who knows? I had to find out, make sure it was him that they said who it was. So then I went to him, came back with no match. Then I went to Prospective B, I found out who he was, and he was living in Anchorage. He's a very well-known artist that does bracelets, silver bracelets, Southeastern style. Jan C. is his name. So come to find out, my biological father was Ben C. And my wife says after the first time, about, I don't know, 10, 15 years before that, I seen him picture it, and she said, that's who your father was. I said, no, I didn't. My mother said it was this guy. So anyway, through the DNA test, it was a 98% match. So when I go from there to, and I now will go into about retirement, because he's retired as an artist. So now we're going to go into something a little bit in retirement. Retirements of many kinds: military, Olympics, pro sports, school teachers, bus drivers, a farmer. Then there's school buses, airplanes are retired, commercial trucks, and commercial fishing boats. Ones that are so old that they are no longer in the industry. All of these, for one reason or another, this is about my uncle's sailboat, Carol Comcott, called the MV Alert. Has been passed on from one fisherman to another. Finally, they set it up on blocks. The Alert was not ready to retire. It went from a wooden boat to a fiberglass boat. So it continued in the industry after it was a wooden boat. And then the last one I know that had it was Kenny Hunkola, and it's sitting up on blocks. And it's layered with fiberglass, the same boat, to keep it along working in the industry. And the back of the cabin, the boom, there stands this boom, and it stands straight up in the air, and it's got a mast. And it's got these cables, goes to the side of the boat and to the bottom of the boat. Then if the mast is halfway down, then it's a retirement. So the mast also, the boom holds a power block to bring the seine aboard the boat, the back of the boat. Then on the short prose about the same boat in retirement, each day this Alert sits in the middle of the summer, surrounded by the sea of leaves. Can't help but remember the days of the sea. Many a men have captained the Alert at one time or another. They are all sea warriors of the sea. To captivate this boat, along with many other different crew, they held this vessel fast to the sea. The sun rises, sunsets, the reflections on the calm waters, the gulls, the killer whales, with many other sea mammals. Many other rough seas that I have traveled through, I cannot count its way back, but the Alert can. To find many which I have never seen, to pay the checks to keep the Alert afloat. From time to time, the one day, they haul the Alert out where there is not to be found. Hauled where it is. The last time, here I sit in the middle of the alders, with the sea of leaves. When comes winter, there's not a leaf to be found on a tree. I am in plain sight. Oh, how I miss the sound. Poem of the MV Alert. When the mast is set, I'm out of the alders. When the mast is half set, I am nowhere to be found. But on the ground amongst the sea of leaves, I go back every year. If the alert lays in ashes, burnt to a crisp, it's in retirement, nowhere to be found. This one here is about a special friend who's been fighting cancer. I kind of did like Dennis says, you had Jimmy Morrison as a backup. The last time I did it in Corova at the last poll reading. But this time I'm not going to have the backup of it. But right toward the end of the stanza, I'm going to share with you the poem that got me here by Buck Malloy, who is one that kind of introduced me that there's this thing that he went to every fall, and I asked him, said, where do you go? He said, well, I go to Astoria, Oregon. And he said, yeah, I go there for poem reading. And I thought, well, maybe I'll check into that. So I checked into it. And the reason why I wrote the poem that I'm going to read at the last part of this song that was written by Jim Morrison called Riders in the Storm, but named a little different. But the reason why this poem was written was, how do you thank somebody for risking their life with the crew to come in to show you way into Egg Island Bar? Like for instance, if you're going through the Columbia Bar, you have lights, you have the Coast Guard, you have a way to get in and out. But in Egg Island, when you're the buoy is 8 miles offshore, the breakers are breaking 8 miles offshore. And all the bars are closed from Soft Duck to Cocaine, Grass Island, Petal, Egg Island, and Strawberry. So in order to get back to Corova, you got to go through the Henshaw entrance. So anyway, at that time, the Loran burnt down, and there was no way to find our way in. There were 67 of us that were outside of Egg Island for a couple hours waiting for the tide to turn so that we can go back into Egg Island, so that we get inside the bar. But we waited and waited and waited. Then this fellow by the name of Erling Carlson had the boat called a Thor. And so what he did is he risked his crew to come out through Egg Island to show us the way back into Egg Island. So how do you thank somebody for what they did? So what I did is I wrote this poem and I put it in the Corova newspaper, and thanking him for what he had did. So anyway, I'm going to start with this song with the Riders of the Storm, but it's going to go like this. Drifters on the storm, drifters on the storm, to this gulf we're born, to this gulf we're thrown, like a man without a home, contractor on the road, drifters on the storm. It's the killer of the storm. This train is whirling like a toad. That's the day and stay. Watch your children play. If you leave this rogue and hide, sweet memories will survive. It's the killer of the storm. Yeah. Gotta love your man. Girl, you love your man. Grab him by the gland. Shake him, understand. This world is out of hand. His life is in your hand. Gotta love your man. Drifters of the storm. Drifters of the storm. To this gulf we're born. To this gulf we're thrown. Like a man without a throne. Make him come on home. And here I'm going to introduce the first poem I ever wrote. It's called To the Copper River Flats. On the way to the flats, one never knows till we get back. One day we're glad, the next day we're sad. The risk we take, only those with us can relate. There's no room for mistakes, money or pride, we walk all the same stride, some high, some low, and slow. One hopes that we all make it back. from the Copper Flats. Drifters of the storm, drifters of the Gulf, drifters of the Gulf, drifters come back home. That's the end of it. That's the end of my harmonica.